The transport ship broke apart 3,000 meters above the surface of 7. Lieutenant Commander Grace Holland grabbed the emergency handles and braced herself as fire and metal screamed around her. She could hear her team shouting through the chaos, but she could not see them through the smoke. The crash came hard and fast. Grace felt her body slam against the restraints, and then everything went dark for a moment. When she opened her eyes, she was hanging upside down in what remained of the cabin. Blood dripped from a cut on her forehead, and her ears were ringing. She cut herself free and dropped to the ceiling that was now the floor. Around her, she counted bodies. Some were moving, some were not. She found Specialist Danny pulling himself from the wreckage with a broken nose and wild eyes. Corporal Vance was already checking the others for signs of life. Out of 12, only 5 survived the crash. Grace pulled her weapon from the debris and looked through the shattered hull at the alien sky. 7 was a contested world in a war that had lasted 3 years. They controlled the space above them now. There would be no rescue coming. Far above the burning wreckage, Fleet Admiral watched the footage from his observation drones. His long gray fingers tapped against the armrest of his command chair as he studied the survivors crawling from the human transport. He had ordered the ship destroyed as a message to the human fleet. Now he saw an opportunity for something more useful. Observer stood beside him, her 4 eyes focused on the display screens. She was a scientist, not a soldier, but the war had brought her to this ship to study human weaknesses. So far, the humans had proven difficult to kill through conventional means. They healed too fast, fought too hard, and refused to surrender even when logic demanded it. But biology was another matter. Turned to her. The Crimson Spore was ready for deployment, yes. Hesitated. The Crimson Spore was their greatest biological weapon. It had killed every species it had ever contacted. 47 different life forms across the galaxy had fallen to it. None had survived. She had argued against using it on humans without more testing, but the High Council had grown impatient with the war. "It is ready," she said. Gestured to the screen showing the human survivors. "Then let us see what it does to them. Deploy it at their location, and keep the drones recording. I want documentation of everything." On the surface, Grace led her team away from the crash site. They moved through dense purple vegetation toward a mountain range she had spotted during their descent. The mountains meant caves, and caves meant shelter from patrols. Danny walked beside her, holding a cloth to his broken nose. He was 23 years old, and this was his first deployment to a combat zone. Grace had promised his mother she would bring him home safe. That promise felt hollow now. They walked for 6 hours before they found the caves. By then, the sun was setting and the temperature was dropping fast. Grace posted a watch and let the others rest. She did not sleep. She sat at the cave entrance and watched the alien stars appear one by one in the darkening sky. She did not see the spores drifting down through the atmosphere. None of them did. Danny was the first to notice something wrong the next morning. He woke up with a headache that felt like fire behind his eyes. His skin was hot to the touch, and his hands were shaking. Checked him over and found nothing obvious, but her face told Grace everything she needed to know. Something was wrong. By midday, Danny could barely stand. Red patches appeared on his arms and neck. His fever climbed higher and higher. Had seen many things in her years as a combat medic, but she had never seen anything like this. Grace contacted their emergency channel, hoping someone might hear. The only response was static. In orbit, watched the drone footage with satisfaction. The Crimson Spore was working exactly as designed. The young human male had been exposed during their march through the vegetation. Now his body was failing, just as the bodies of 47 other species had failed before him. Watched too, but she felt no satisfaction. She felt only the cold curiosity of a scientist observing an experiment. She noted the speed of symptom progression, the pattern of skin discoloration, the rising body temperature. Everything matched her predictions. The human would be dead within hours. Grace held Danny's hand as he shook and sweated on the cave floor. His eyes were glassy and unfocused. He kept mumbling about home, about his mother, about a girl named Lucy who he had never told he loved. Administered every medication they had. Nothing helped. They had no idea what was attacking his body. They only knew it was winning. By evening, Danny's fever reached a temperature that should have killed him. His skin was burning hot and his breathing was shallow and rapid. Grace prepared herself to watch another soldier die under her command. She had done it before. It never got easier. But Danny did not die. His fever held at that impossible temperature for 1 hour, then 2, then 3. His body should have shut down. His brain should have cooked inside his skull. But his heart kept beating and his lungs kept working, and somehow, impossibly, he kept living. Leaned forward in her chair, her 4 eyes wide. This was not possible. The Crimson Spore had a perfect record. 100% mortality across all known species. No exceptions. No survivors, ever. Noticed her reaction. What is happening? I do not know, she admitted. His body temperature is beyond survivable limits for any species in our database. He should be dead. He should have been dead hours ago. But he is not dead. No, he is not. In the cave, Grace watched Danny's face as the fever finally began to break. His skin was still red and hot, but his breathing was steadying. His eyes were clearing. He looked up at her and tried to smile through cracked lips. I feel strange, he whispered, really strange, but I think I am going to be okay. Grace did not know whether to laugh or cry. She squeezed his hand and told him to rest. Outside the cave, night had fallen again on 7. Above them, unseen drones continued to record everything. The war was about to change forever, but none of them knew it yet. Danny had been dying for 2 days. Now he was sitting up and asking for water. Grace Holland watched him drink from their last canteen and tried to make sense of what she was seeing. 48 hours ago, his fever had been high enough to kill any living thing she knew of. His skin had been covered in red patches that looked like burns. His eyes had been glassy and empty, and she had been certain she was watching the end of his life. Now the red patches were fading. His fever was dropping. His eyes were clear and focused and full of something she could not identify. Not fear, not relief, something else. Vance ran her scanner over his body for the 20th time that morning. The readings made no sense to her. His immune system was working at levels she had never seen before. His white blood cell count was through the roof. His body was not just fighting whatever had infected him. It was winning. How do you feel? She asked him. Danny thought about it for a long moment. Hungry, he said finally. Really hungry, like I have not eaten in weeks. Grace dug through their emergency supplies and found a ration bar. Danny ate it in 4 bites and immediately asked for another. She gave him 3 more. He finished them all and still looked unsatisfied. In orbit above 7, Observer had not slept in 2 days. She sat in front of her analysis screens surrounded by data that contradicted everything she knew about biology. The Crimson Spore was the most lethal biological weapon ever created. It had killed millions across dozens of worlds. No species had ever developed resistance to it. Until now. She watched the drone footage again and again. The human's body temperature had peaked at a level that would have instantly killed It would have killed any species in the known galaxy, but the human had survived it. His body had used that impossible heat to burn the spore out of his system. Fleet Admiral stood behind her, his patience wearing thin. Explain this to me in simple terms. Turned to face him. Her 4 eyes were tired and troubled. Human biology is more aggressive than we understood. Their immune systems do not just defend against threats. They attack them. They adapt to them. They overcome them through methods we would consider fatal to the host organism. The fever should have killed him, said. Yes, in any other species it would have, but humans evolved on a world where disease was constant. Their bodies learned to use extreme measures to fight infection, measures that would kill weaker organisms but that humans can somehow survive. Was silent for a long moment, so the crimson spore is useless against them. I cannot say that with certainty based on one case, but this footage suggests that humans may be resistant to biological weapons in ways we never imagined. In the cave on 7, Danny finished his 6th ration bar and still felt empty inside. The hunger was strange. It was not just in his stomach, it was everywhere. His whole body was crying out for something and he did not know what. He stood up slowly, testing his legs. They held. Grace watched him with concerned eyes, but she did not stop him. He walked deeper into the cave, following some instinct he did not understand. The walls of the cave were damp and covered with some kind of growth. It was red and fuzzy, and it seemed to pulse slightly in the dim light. Danny knew without being told that this was what had made him sick. This was the thing that had almost killed him. He reached out and touched it. Grace shouted for him to stop, but she was too late. Danny had already pulled a handful of the red growth from the wall. He looked at it in his palm. It was soft and warm, and it smelled like copper and earth. His body told him to eat it. Every rational part of his mind screamed that this was insane. This thing had nearly killed him. It was poison. It was death. But his body did not care what his mind thought. His body knew what it needed. He put the red growth in his mouth and swallowed. Vance grabbed his arm and tried to make him spit it out, but it was too late. Danny had already reached for more. He tore another handful from the wall and ate it too. Then another. Then another. Grace and could only watch in horror as Danny ate the thing that had almost ended his life. In orbit, watched through the drone cameras and felt something she had not felt in years. Fear. True fear. Not of the human eating the spore. Fear of what it meant. She ran to her analysis station and pulled up the chemical breakdown of what was happening inside Danny's body. His digestive system was not just processing the crimson spore. It was breaking it down into basic nutrients, proteins, sugars, minerals. His gut bacteria were treating the deadliest biological weapon in the galaxy like food. Because to his body, that was exactly what it was. Appeared beside her. What is he doing? He is eating it, said, her voice barely a whisper. He is eating the crimson spore. His body has adapted to treat it as a food source. That is not possible. I am watching it happen right now. His digestive system is converting the spore into energy and nutrients. He is not just surviving it. He is consuming it. He is using it to make himself stronger. Stared at the screen for a long time. Then he turned and walked away without a word. Knew he was going to contact the High Council. She knew this footage would change everything about their war. In the cave, Danny finally stopped eating. His face and hands were covered in red residue. His stomach was full and the strange hunger was finally satisfied. He looked at Grace, and with an expression that was almost apologetic. I needed it, he said. I know that sounds crazy, but my body needed it. Grace did not know what to say. She had spent her career studying alien biology, but she had never seen anything like this. A human who could not only survive a deadly pathogen but convert it into sustenance. Cleaned the red residue from Danny's face with shaking hands. Her scanner showed his vitals were stronger than before. His energy levels were higher. His immune system was even more active. He was right, his body had needed it. Outside the cave, dawn was breaking over 7. The first light of the alien sun touched the purple vegetation and made it glow. Somewhere far above them, commanders were receiving reports that would shake the foundations of their empire. The humans had not just survived their ultimate weapon, they had eaten it. And they had grown stronger because of it. The emergency transmission from Grace Holland reached the human fleet 6 hours after Danny finished eating the crimson spore. Admiral Blake read the report 3 times before she believed what she was seeing. She sat alone in her quarters aboard the flagship Resolute and watched the footage that Grace had managed to send through an encrypted channel. The quality was poor and the image kept breaking up, but she could see enough. She could see a young soldier tearing a red fungus from a cave wall and shoving it into his mouth. She could see him eating more and more of it. She could see him standing up afterward, stronger than before. Admiral Blake had been fighting for 3 years. She had lost 17 ships and 4,000 soldiers. She had watched biological weapons kill her people in ways that haunted her dreams. They had always held that advantage over humanity. Their mastery of engineered pathogens was unmatched. Now she was looking at a video that changed everything. She called her senior staff to the briefing room and showed them the footage. No one spoke for a long time after it ended. They just sat there, staring at the frozen image of Danny with red residue covering his face and hands. Commander was the first to break the silence. "Is this real?" "Lieutenant Holland's credentials check out," Blake replied. "The transmission came from 7, which matches her last known position, and the biological data she included matches what we know about bioweapons." But a human eating a deadly pathogen and getting stronger from it shook his head. "That sounds impossible." Blake leaned forward. 3 years ago, they told us that humans could never survive in space for more than a generation. They said our bodies were too fragile, are too short. They called us a primitive species that would die out within a century. How many of their predictions have come true so far? No one answered. They all knew the record. They had underestimated humanity at every turn. They had expected easy victories and instead found themselves locked in a war they could not win. Maybe this was just another example of the same mistake. Blake contacted the Human Science Division and shared the footage with their top researchers. Within hours, theories began flowing back. The leading hypothesis came from a doctor named Carroll who specialized in human evolutionary biology. Humans evolved in an environment of constant biological warfare, she explained over a secure video link. "We have been fighting bacteria, viruses, fungi, and parasites for millions of years. Our immune systems are not just defensive. They are aggressive. They adapt. They learn. And our digestive systems contain trillions of microorganisms that can break down almost any organic compound." "So we can eat poison," Blake said. "Some poisons, yes. Our ancestors ate fermented foods, spoiled meat, plants with natural toxins. The ones who survived passed on their genes. Over millions of years, we developed the ability to process things that would kill other species instantly." Blake thought about the implications. They had built their entire war strategy around biological weapons. If humans were immune to those weapons, or worse, if humans could consume those weapons and grow stronger from them, then the balance of power had just shifted dramatically. She issued new orders to the fleet. All ships were to change course toward bioweapon production facilities. If the enemy's greatest weapons were useless against humanity, then those facilities were no longer a threat. They were targets. In the High Council chambers, High Counselor watched the same footage that Admiral Blake had seen. Unlike the human admiral, had access to the original drone recordings in perfect clarity. She could see every detail of Danny consuming the crimson spore. She had ruled for 40 years. She had led them through 3 major wars and countless smaller conflicts. She had never felt afraid before. She felt afraid now. Observer stood before the council, presenting her findings. Her voice was steady, but her 4 eyes betrayed her unease. "The human immune system operates at temperatures that would be fatal to any known species," she explained. "Their digestive systems contain microorganisms capable of breaking down complex toxins into basic nutrients. They did not just survive the crimson spore. They metabolized it. They used it as fuel." Fleet Admiral spoke from his position at the military table. "This is one case, one human. We cannot base our strategy on a single data point. Turn to face him. The footage has been seen by troops across the fleet. I have received reports of soldiers refusing to handle biological weapons. They are afraid, Admiral. They are afraid of what the humans will do if we use these weapons against them again. Started to argue but raised her hand for silence. The Admiral fell quiet immediately. "Show me the footage again," commanded. Played the recording one more time. The council watched in silence as Danny tore the red fungus from the cave wall and consumed it. They watched him stand up afterward, stronger and healthier than before. They watched him look directly at the camera drone with eyes that held no fear at all. When the footage ended, spoke slowly and carefully. "We designed the Crimson Spore to be unstoppable. We tested it on 47 species. It killed every single one. We thought it would end this war." She paused and looked around the chamber at the faces of her advisors and generals. "Instead, it has shown us something we should have understood from the beginning. We are not fighting a normal enemy. We are fighting a species that evolved on a death world. A species that has spent millions of years learning to survive things that would destroy any other form of life." "What do we do now?" asked. Was silent for a long moment. Then she gave an order that no leader had ever given before. "Open a communication channel to the human fleet. Tell them we want to talk." The war was not over yet, but for the first time since it began, both sides were starting to understand what they were truly dealing with. The transmission from the High Council reached Admiral Blake 3 days after Danny ate the Crimson Spore. She read it carefully, then read it again, then called an emergency meeting of her command staff. "They want to negotiate," she announced. "High Counselor herself has requested a meeting." Commander looked skeptical. "It could be a trap." "It could be," Blake agreed, "but they have never requested negotiations before, not once in 3 years of war. Something has changed." She knew exactly what had changed. The footage of Danny had spread through both fleets like wildfire. Human soldiers watched it and felt hope for the first time in years. Soldiers watched it and felt something they had never felt when facing humans before: fear. Blake accepted the meeting request. The two sides agreed to meet at a neutral space station called Concordance, which had been abandoned since the war began. Both sides would bring minimal security. Both sides would come ready to talk. Before she left for the meeting, Blake made one more decision. She contacted Grace Holland on 7 and arranged for her team to be evacuated. Grace had been promoted to ambassador in recognition of her actions. More importantly, Blake wanted Danny at those negotiations. Not as a soldier, as proof. On 7, Grace received the news of her promotion with mixed feelings. She had never wanted to be a diplomat. She was a scientist and an officer, but she understood why they needed her. She had witnessed what Danny did. She could explain it in ways that recordings could not capture. Danny took the news more quietly. He had spent the last 3 days feeling strange in ways he could not describe. His body felt different, stronger, more alive, but also more aware of things he had never noticed before. He could smell chemicals in the air that no human should be able to detect. He could sense changes in temperature that would have been invisible to him a week ago. Whatever the Crimson Spore had done to him, it had not just made him immune. It had changed him in ways he was still discovering. The evacuation shuttle arrived the next morning. Grace, Danny, and Vance boarded along with the 2 other survivors of their original team. They left 7 behind and headed for Concordance Station. Aboard the command ship, Observer was preparing for the negotiations in her own way. She had spent every waking hour since the incident studying human biology. What she had learned terrified her. Humans were not just resistant to biological weapons. They were biological weapons themselves. Their bodies hosted trillions of microorganisms that could adapt to almost any threat. Their immune systems could identify and destroy foreign agents with brutal efficiency. Their digestive systems could break down compounds that would be lethal to any other species. And most disturbing of all, they did not even know it. To humans, this was just normal. They had lived this way for so long that they did not understand how remarkable their biology truly was. Compiled her research into a report for High Counselor. She included everything she had learned about human evolution, human disease resistance, human adaptability. She ended the report with a simple conclusion. We cannot win a biological war against this species. We must find another way. Read the report in silence. Then she ordered to accompany her to Concordance Station. She wanted a scientist at her side during the negotiations. She wanted someone who truly understood what they were dealing with. Fleet Admiral was also coming, though his role had changed. He was no longer in command of the war effort, had quietly removed him from that position after the Crimson Spore incident. He was now an advisor, nothing more. His failure to anticipate human resilience had cost him everything. He accepted the demotion without complaint. He had seen the footage too. He knew the war was already lost. Concordance Station hung in the darkness between stars, a ghost of a place that had once been home to thousands. Now it was empty except for the two delegations that were slowly making their way toward its central chamber. Admiral Blake arrived first. She brought Commander, Ambassador Holland, Corporal Vance, and Danny. She also brought a small security detail, though she hoped they would not be needed. High Counselor arrived 30 minutes later. She brought a handful of advisors. Her security detail was larger than Blake's, but she had ordered them to keep their weapons holstered unless absolutely necessary. The two groups met in the station's main conference room. It was a large space with a circular table in the center and viewports that looked out at the stars. Dust covered everything. The air was stale and cold. Blake and faced each other across the table. Neither spoke for a long moment. They were enemies who had never met in person, leaders who had sent thousands to their deaths in each other's names. There was a weight in the room that words could not lift. Finally broke the silence. I have seen the footage of your soldier, the one who consumed our weapon. Danny shifted uncomfortably at the mention. He was not used to being the center of attention. He was just a specialist who had been in the wrong place at the wrong time. We did not know it was possible, continued. In 47 species, we never saw anything like it. Your kind has abilities we did not understand. Blake nodded slowly. We have been trying to tell you that for 3 years. His 4 eyes blinked in what might have been acknowledgement. Yes, you have, we should have listened. She looked at Danny directly for the first time. He felt the weight of her gaze and forced himself to meet it. What did it feel like, she asked him, when you consumed the spore? Danny thought about the question for a long moment. Necessary, he said finally. It felt necessary, like my body knew what it needed and I just had to trust it. Nodded, then she turned back to Blake. I am ready to discuss terms for ending this war. 6 months had passed since the first meeting at Concordance Station. The war was officially over. The treaty had been signed by both sides 3 weeks ago. Now they were gathering one final time for the formal ceremony that would mark the beginning of a new relationship between humans and Ambassador Grace Holland stood at the viewport of her quarters and watched ships from both fleets arriving at the station. Human vessels and vessels flew side by side now, something that would have been unthinkable just months ago. The universe had changed in ways no one could have predicted. She thought about everything that had led to this moment. A crashed transport, a deadly spore, a young soldier who should have died but did not. Such small things to shift the course of history. A knock at her door pulled her from her thoughts. She opened it to find Danny standing in the corridor. He was wearing a formal uniform for the first time since she had known him. He looked uncomfortable in it. They want us in the main chamber, he said. The ceremony is starting soon. Grace nodded and followed him through the station's winding corridors. Concordance had been restored to life over the past months. Engineers from both species had worked together to repair its systems and clean its halls. It was now a symbol of cooperation where it had once been a symbol of abandonment. The main chamber was filled with delegates from both sides. Humans in their dark uniforms stood across from in their flowing robes. The tension was still there, buried beneath formal smiles and careful words. 3 years of war did not disappear overnight, but there was hope too, real hope for the first time. Admiral Blake stood at the front of the human delegation. She had led them through the worst of the war, and now she was leading them into peace. Grace admired her steadiness, her refusal to let bitterness poison the negotiations. High Counselor stood opposite her, representing the. She looked older than she had at their first meeting. The weight of what she had learned about humans seemed to have settled into her bones, but her 4 eyes were clear and determined. Observer stood beside, just as she had at every meeting since the war ended. She had become the foremost expert on human biology. Her research had helped both sides understand what made humans so resilient. More importantly, it had helped them understand that resilience did not have to mean threat. Grace took her place among the human delegates. Danny stood beside her, still uncomfortable with all the attention. He had become famous in both fleets, the human who ate death and lived, the soldier who changed the war by surviving it. He did not want any of it. He just wanted to go home. Stepped forward to address the assembled crowd. Her translator device rendered her words into perfect English for the human delegates. 3 years ago, we began a war because we believed humans were a threat to our empire. We believed your rapid expansion, your aggressive nature, your refusal to submit to the established order made you dangerous. We thought we could defeat you with our superior technology and our mastery of biological warfare. She paused and looked directly at Danny. We were wrong, not because you were weaker than we thought, because you were stronger in ways we could not imagine. You are a species that evolved on a world that tried to kill you every day of your existence. You learned to eat poison and turn it into strength. You learned to survive temperatures that would destroy any other life form. You learned to adapt to threats that would have ended any other species. Her gaze moved across the human delegation. We spent 3 years trying to find your weakness. We never found it, because your greatest weakness is also your greatest strength. You are fragile. You die easily compared to us, but you never stop fighting. You never stop adapting. You never stop finding ways to survive. Admiral Blake stepped forward to respond. Her voice was calm and measured, but carried easily through the chamber. We did not want this war. We have never wanted war with any species, but when you attacked us, we fought back. That is what humans do. We protect ourselves. We protect each other. And yes, we adapt. We survive. We consume whatever threatens us and we grow stronger from it. She looked at with something like respect. But survival is not enough. We do not want to spend our existence fighting. We want to build. We want to explore. We want to learn from other species and share what we have learned with them. This treaty is not just an end to war. It is a beginning of something better. Nodded slowly, then we are in agreement. The signing ceremony was simple and quick. Both leaders placed their marks on the document that would bind their species to peace. There was no celebration. Too many had died for celebration. But there was relief, visible on faces from both sides. The war was truly over. Afterward, Grace found herself standing at one of the chamber's viewports. The scientist was studying her with those 4 curious eyes. I have a question, said, about your biology, about what happened to Specialist. Grace nodded. I will answer if I can. Hesitated before speaking. When he consumed the spore, his body treated it as food, but it should have been poison. How did his body know the difference? Grace thought about the question for a long moment. It did not know the difference. That is the point. Human bodies do not classify things as food or poison the way other species do. We process whatever we encounter and adapt to it. Sometimes that kills us, but when it does not kill us, it makes us stronger. Was silent, processing this information. Your species frightens us, she admitted finally, but it also fascinates us. I believe we have much to learn from each other. Grace smiled. I believe so too. Across the chamber, Danny stood alone, looking out at the stars. He was thinking about Seven, about the cave, about the red fungus that had almost killed him and then saved him. He still did not fully understand what had happened to him that day. He probably never would. But he knew one thing for certain. He was still human. Whatever changes had occurred in his body, whatever adaptations had taken place, he was still the same person he had always been. A soldier who wanted to go home. A young man who missed his mother and thought about a girl named Lucy. The war had ended because the witnessed a human devour what killed them. But Danny knew it was not really about eating poison. It was about something simpler than that. It was about refusing to die. It was about adapting to survive. It was about being human. And that was something no alien species would ever fully understand.